Welcome to Interface. Today we have Professor Dr. Indumati from Institute of Mathematical Science, Chennai with us. Welcome to this program.
Thank you.
You are the coordinator for detectors and simulations of the India-based Neutrino Observatory being set up at Theni in Madurai district of Tamil Nadu.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
First of all, can you tell me why the project is set up at Theni?
Now, I'd like to put this in a little bit of a context before I begin. This is a very unusual project and in fact it's unique of its kind in India, what we are trying to achieve over here. Because neutrinos are very unusual, because they are very weakly interacting, it is necessary to have neutrino detectors underground. In fact, the world over, neutrino detectors are underground because otherwise there is this huge amount of cosmic ray muon flux that is always falling on us from all the stars and galaxies around us, and that will completely wash out our neutrino signal, which is extremely weak. Because we have to go underground, we have two choices. We either have to go to a mine or we have to go under a mountain. Because today, neutrino physics is quite an old physics. Actually, it's no longer new. More than 30-40 years, neutrino research has been going on around the world. The detectors have become larger and larger. That is because you want to take larger amounts of data to do very high precision physics experiments. Because of this, it's much more convenient to go under a mountain. The reason is that as the mountain rises in front of you, you are going to dig a horizontal tunnel into which you can drive in and drive out, and that makes not only for convenience, it also makes for the safety, because drive in and drive out tunnels are much safer than the mine shafts, which are very restricted in terms of time and the way in which you can go up and down. It's also a matter of convenience. So having said this, now we have to find a site which is near a mountain so that you can go under the mountain. But before I actually say why specifically we chose Pottipuram, I'd like to say a few things about the project itself. I mean, it's unusual because physicists usually put up experiments in labs, and these labs are in research institutes, universities or IITs like that. But here actually we are getting together to build a lab which is somewhere far away from all our institutes, because there are 26 research institutions, universities and IITs which are participating in this project. And while some R&D is going on in all of them, ultimately all these scientists and students will be involved in setting up the lab which we have chosen in this Pottipuram in Theni district. That is the closest village actually, that is the Pottipuram Panchayat in Tamil Nadu. But first of all, there is many kinds of interfaces. Since your project is called Interface, this program and show is called Interface. The first is the interface of theorists with experimentalists. As you said, I am one of the coordinators of the simulations group in INO, and when the experimentalists want to build their detector, they want to make sure their detector is optimized for the kind of studies that we want to do. This is primarily because neutrino physics is a very slow experiment. The count rates are very low, and because neutrinos are extremely weakly interacting, and because of that you want to double check your calculations, you want to do the theory correctly, you want to simulate exactly how it will be if you had put that detector underground. So there are these bunch of theorists who are working on it, and then the experimentalists come back to them and discuss whether the detectors can or cannot do the kind of science that the theorists are talking about. This is one level of interface. The other level of interface I already talked about, that so many research institutions and labs in India have come together for this. And the final unusual part is the students get trained in very different aspects of this experiment. When you put this all together, you find it is still not enough. The main interface that we needed to do for the lab is to consult geologists, environmental scientists and various engineers, because when you choose a lab like this, when you choose a site for a lab like this, which you know that will run for many decades, we would like it to be alive for 100 years if possible, long after we both have finished our physics and our lives. And in order to do this, we must get input on what quality of rock is required, because that is the primary criterion. We have to have good quality rock for the safety of this lab. It must last so many 100 years. And for this, we go to the geologists, Geological Survey of India, who know all the rock types in India, tell us what is good quality rock where we can safely set up such a lab. So already we know that it has to be underground to get away from the cosmic radiation, and the physics demand requires that it must be at least 1 kilometer underground, and not just 1 kilometer underground in every direction. Suppose I have an underground lab here with a mountain around it, in every direction that I can see from the underground lab, I must have minimum 1000 meters of cover. That means 1000 meters of rock cover. So this is what the geologists tell us, that if you draw a line from Bangalore to Chennai and look south of that line, technically this is the south of the 13° north latitude, then you have good quality, very solid, very dense rock called Charnockite. And this is therefore found mainly in Kerala and Tamil Nadu states. But if you look at the kind of detector we will be putting there, these detectors work best in relatively low humidity, low rainfall environment, which means that since Kerala is so green because of its abundant rainfall, we prefer to go to Tamil Nadu. Even within Tamil Nadu, the next primary criterion we had for selecting the site was the ecological impact. We wanted to find a site which had minimal ecological impact, because you know that once you come to near mountains, this is where the forests of India are. And this input was given by the Salim Ali Center, SACON, who did a survey of various sites that we had listed according to our physics requirements and the rock quality requirements, and we found the site which we believe has minimum environmental impact. So these considerations together brought us to Pottipuram in Theni district.
Okay. So now you discussed about the environmental thing. So there was some apprehensions about how to drill the big cave.
Yes, yes.
So can you discuss further more on?
Yeah. So as I said again and again, we have also learnt a lot. I mean, apart from physics, we have learnt a lot of engineering and other sciences in this project, and we have been consulting various scientists and engineers about this project. So what we have learned from them, I also want to tell you that the Tamil Nadu Electricity Board has done the engineering study for how we are going to build this cavern and the lab. So what we need to do is that as the mountain rises, I have already told you we have a horizontal tunnel. This will be about nearly 2 kilometers long, about 1.91 is the projected distance, at the end of which there will be a complex of caverns that will hold our detector, which will do the neutrino experiments. Now, how are you going to actually make this tunnel? To make this tunnel, you have to actually drill out the rock and excavate it. And the way we plan to do it is through something called controlled blasting. Now, controlled blasting, when you hear the word blasting, this is not like Diwali fireworks or even open quarrying. The word controlled implies that this will be done in a very scientific manner. And what is the consequence of doing it in a scientific manner? Because I do not have the graphs to show you, but what I can say is the following. Suppose I make one controlled blast, it's called a pull. This pull only lasts a few seconds, like 1, 2, 3, it's done. The blast is finished, its vibrations, everything are over. Now, even though it lasts only a few seconds, how will those vibrations travel from the point of the blast to some places further away? I mean, what will be the effect felt far away? So the calculations of the engineers show that this vibrations damp down exponentially, that means very, very fast, as you go farther away from the blast site. To give an example, if you are a few hundred meters away, say about half a kilometer or even less from the blast site, the vibration, and remember this vibration lasts only a few seconds, is less than 1 millimeter. The ground vibration is less than 1 millimeter, which is probably this much, okay? So if you go a kilometer away, you will hardly feel any vibrations, and people are worried about the impact of this on several dams, and all these dams happen to be located in Kerala on the other side actually, and they are about 40 to 50 kilometers away, these dams, and you can see from this calculation that there will be no effect felt at all on dams which are so far away, and even in fact within a kilometer you can see that the vibrations will be very, very small. So we do not expect that there will be any impact of these vibrations on any of the surrounding villages or their houses or anything at all.
Also, this type of controlled blasting is been used for making other tunnels in Ooty, Nilgiris.
Yes.
So can you tell a little
Yes,
more?
we have also been learning a lot about various tunnels, especially in South India. Controlled blasting has been used to build tunnels. I would like to highlight two different examples. One is the site in Nilgiris in the Tamil Nadu side in a place called Singara, where the Tamil Nadu Electricity Board has dug nearly 13 kilometers of tunnels to build an underground power project called Pushep. Now, this was constructed below the Glenmorgan forebay, which is where the water is being held in order to turn the turbines. So there is a forebay on the top, and there's a very steep tunnel at 60-degree angle coming down 1 kilometer underground to where the power is generated by turning the turbines, and then the water is taken away by underground tunnels to join the river outside. So this was done very safely, and no impact was felt at all on the dam, holding dam above. In addition to that, the entrance to this underground power station, the entrance tunnel, it's also a horizontal tunnel. This tunnel, the portal of this tunnel, the entrance is just 200 meters away from a heritage power station called Singara Powerhouse, and there was no effect at all on the powerhouse. In fact, it took more than 10 years for them to dig this entire complex of tunnels, and actually the Singara Powerhouse was working all through. The second example I want to take is that of Idukki itself in Kerala. Idukki Dam was commissioned in 1973. It was envisaged in late 60s, but the construction was completed in 73. Also, Idukki Dam has an underground powerhouse. Many of these places in the Western Ghats, the powerhouses are underground to minimize the ecological impact. So, Idukki also has an underground powerhouse, and this underground powerhouse was only finished in 1976. It has a 2 kilometer long tunnel to bring the water from the dam underground to two pressure shafts which are nearly 1 kilometer long each. It comes to this underground powerhouse, and then the water comes out again through a 1 kilometer tail race tunnel, and all this was completed 3 years later in 1976. And the dam was commissioned already, and no damage was felt at all to this dam, which is actually above, right, because all the tunneling is below. So there's actually proof already, you know, in Kerala, in Tamil Nadu, that such dams are very stable against such construction.
What about the muck which has been removed from the making of the tunnel? Is it granite type? It will be stored somewhere, or is it used?
Yeah. Of course, we are building this 2 kilometer long tunnel and a complex of caverns at the end of it. And when we excavate all this material, the excavated material is called muck. Now, muck to the English mind, the muck has a very negative connotation, but this is a technical name for whatever comes out through the tunnel. And in our case, because this is Charnockite rock, because this is extremely solid monolithic Charnockite rock, more than 90% of this is going to come out in chunks and boulders. So it is like granite, it is very useful as construction material. So though you give the name muck to it, it is not something that is going to be dumped somewhere and will pollute the surroundings. It will be lifted and disposed of to be used later as construction material. But even in the interim, when we bring out the material and before it is lifted off, just in case there is a problem in taking it away, we have in the INO land, we have acquired some land around for building the portal, the access to the tunnel, and some surface facilities like our offices, some hostels, guest house and various other buildings that we will need just outside the tunnel. And we have kept enough space over there to have a muck storage yard, and it has proper retaining walls, and it will be nicely covered so that even the less than 5% of it, which is in more powdery form, will not disperse and pollute the neighboring countryside. So this can be well taken care of, and as I said, the largest part of it is very useful material, and in fact we have asked the Tamil Nadu government for permission to use 10% of it for our own construction purposes. That is the amount that we will need for ourselves.
Okay. Now let me come to the flora and fauna in this region. Is it affected environmentally? How it will affect this flora and fauna in this region?
As I said, SACON has done this study for us. One thing it is necessary to appreciate is the peculiar geography of this region. This is kind of the plateau of Theni. It's extremely flat. As you approach, in fact, the mountains are in the distance, but even the approach to the mountain, almost to the foot of the mountain, is completely flat, and suddenly it rises in front of you. And rise is very steep. This is why you can get 1000 meter cover in 1.9 kilometer distance of tunnel. What happens because of this is that the geography, the ecology of this place is completely distinct from the ecology on the other side, the Kerala side, which is where the mountain tops are. We are at the bottom of the mountain, and the top of the mountain is very green, very lush, ecologically very, very rich, with both flora and fauna. A lot of large wildlife, including elephants, are there. But at the bottom, because all the rainfall is on the Kerala side, it's a very low rainfall, semi-arid region, it's actually scrub. It's not even forest. We are not going to cut a single tree during this construction. And if you see photos of the place, you will see that it's very, very, very sparsely populated. The flora, there are some identified vulnerable species, but they are not located only inside our land. They are completely dispersed in the entire Theni region. So there will be no difficulty with that. And we are not going to cut any trees over there. And there is no large wildlife at all reported from that site. So there will be no impact on either flora and fauna. And if you go through our environmental impact assessment document, which is available online at the INO website, you will see that the density of both flora and fauna is very, very low for a site which is actually in the Western Ghats. And this is why we believe that we have found a site where we can manage this project with minimal environmental impact.
Let me come to another topic where you have been involved in the outreach program in Theni district.
Yes.
So, can you tell me something about this program?
Well, it was mostly accidental since I am one of the few people in the collaboration who speak Tamil. I should again reiterate that this is an all India project. We have institutions from Kashmir down to American College in Madurai, and then from Bombay to Calcutta. So really our people are spread all over India. But to do outreach among the local people, obviously you need to know Tamil, and then there are a few of us who do speak the language, and therefore when we have done outreach in that area. So we have started the outreach from somewhere, I think, late in 2009. Locals had a lot of questions, of course, to ask. I think more or less the questions were the same. It's a very unusual project. They find it very hard to comprehend why we should, leave our comfortable, labs in, various big cities and come to a very remote area and do our physics there. So there's a certain element of fear, suspicion, but then we have gone and talked a great deal. We have even talked about the physics of neutrinos, and I think now many of our farmer friends there appreciate what neutrinos are, that they are not part of atoms, and that they are not sitting either inside the atomic nucleus or in atoms, that they are very weakly interacting. And all this was communicated in many, many installments, sometimes to the public, sometimes to school children, sometimes to colleges. We have visited not only in the Pottipuram Panchayat itself, but in Theni, Usilampatti, Madurai, all the way down to Kambam. Actually, in colleges we have gone and given lectures and talks over there. And as a slow process, we have repeatedly, clarified their doubts. And every time they asked a question, we put it as a frequently asked question, gave an answer to it, gave it in Tamil as well as put it up in English on our website, and made a collection of these facts and distributed it among the people, so that one by one their fears were allayed. And finally, I think it was July 8th, I think in 2010, we had a large meeting in Pottipuram itself, in a high school in Ramakrishnappuram, which is about a few kilometers away from our proposed site. And there were more than 1,200 villagers present over there, including local MLAs from Bodhi and Uttamapalyam who had come. Panchayat president was present, and the meeting was convened by the district collector, then district collector Shri P. Muthuveeran, IAS. And at that place, the presentations were made in Tamil, and all the various leaders offered their comments and their opinions, at the end of which the Panchayat president responded favorably to the project, and the district collector officially mandated that with the full support of the Panchayat and the local community, that INO can come up in this area. And this was more than 2 years ago in July 2010. And we continue this outreach. Even last month, there was a program in the Madurai to Theni road on the highway college over there, and we are continuing to do this on and off. And in fact, we are very happy to go and talk about our project whenever people are interested and they call us to do this outreach activity.
In addition, let me ask about the Kerala outreach program, which you have undergone now in the last week.
Yes, it has been very interesting, though rather exhausting. I actually want to say that I came here 4 years ago. I came to Kottayam, MG University, and talked about INO, but it was not a sustained activity like this. We have been travelling through Kerala. We have begun in Trivandrum, and then we came to Kottayam, then to Cochin, and then to Calicut. So we have tried to cover many universities and colleges in this region. We have addressed many students, both in BSc and MSc in physics, and we have talked about both what is the science goals and science possibilities of INO, as well as what will be the ecological impact, or if any at all, of setting up such a project, and in fact, in particular, what will be the impact on various sensitive regions and constructions in Kerala. One thing I want to highlight about this is that I was very impressed with the numbers of students who are doing MSc in physics in Kerala. Unfortunately, I don't see in Tamil Nadu so many students opting for master's degree in physics, and I am very heartened to see that physics still has the capability to attract so many students, and they listened very carefully. They have asked many interesting and very challenging questions sometimes about neutrinos, dark matter, origin of the universe, and what will be the effect of what all we study on all these quantities. And it was a very nice and very interesting discussion, and very lively. It was something that I think a lesson that we should take home, that there are still many students who are very keen on doing pure science research, and as a part of the outreach activity, a very important goal of our outreach activity is not only to tell people that this is a very unusual project but is completely harmless, but also use it as a way or a vehicle in which we can attract more and more students to staying in science, to tell them about this opportunity that they can do very good quality science, experiment and theory in India, and therefore to offer them more avenues for research. This is one thing that has come out of this outreach program. The other, of course, was a lot of media attention that we got over the last few days, and now we have been trying to reach out to the Malayalam media, because that is something that we have definitely been lagging behind in, and we hope that by doing these kinds of interactions and by with the cooperation of the Malayalam press, that we will be able to reach even more people and tell them about our project and what it involves.
Thank you to be part of the interface.
Yes, thank you very much.